Innistrad is a world of gothic horror. Humanity is preyed upon by creatures of the night. Werewolves live for the thrill of the hunt, vampires thirst for blood, the restless spirits of the dead haunt the living, and no corpse is safe from defilement at the hands of cruel necromancers or cunning stitchers. Despite an ever-present danger lurking in the darkness, humanity had protectors to keep the horrors at bay. The powerful Archangel Avacyn, the living embodiment of hope and protection for humans across the plane, directly led the charge against the evils of the land, and her presence inspired faith and devotion in the humans of Innistrad, rallying them and founding the Church of Avacyn to govern and protect humanity in her name. While never able to fully vanquish the evils of the land, Avacyn and her church were successful at pushing them back, and for many years humanity was allowed to flourish under her care. But Innistrad is a world of darkness, and such peaceful times are not meant to last. This video will cover the storyline of Shadows Over Innistrad, the second block set in this world. I will stick to the lore that relates directly to the main storyline to keep this video focused and concise. Our story begins shortly after the events of the original Innistrad block. Avacyn had been freed from the Hell Vault, a huge monolith of moonsilver built and enchanted with binding magic by Avacyn's creator, the planeswalker Sorin Markov. The Hell Vault was used to imprison evils that could not be destroyed, such as the demons that would simply regenerate after their death. Things went well for 1,000 years, as Avacyn captured the demons that threatened humanity and imprisoned them inside the Hell Vault, where their essence would be held in a magical stasis for eternity. But one night, just as Avacyn was finally imprisoning one of the last remaining archdemons, the mighty Grizzlebrand, the unholy creature managed to drag Avacyn into the Hell Vault with him, trapping the Archangel within. Humanity faltered during Avacyn's absence, as the holy magics fueled by faith in Avacyn lost their power, the protective wards that kept the darkness at bay failed, and the horrors of the night advanced on civilization. Then, when the situation was at its most dire, the Hell Vault was finally shattered, releasing everyone who was trapped within, including Avacyn. With their symbol of hope restored, the humans rallied behind the Archangel once more, and the combined might of Avacyn and her church fought off the horrors of the night, scattering the devils and demons, sending the restless dead to their blessed sleep, and forcing the vampires to retreat. Avacyn even found a permanent solution to the werewolf problem. The Archangel cast a powerful wave of spells known as the Curse Mute, which transformed the lycanthropy curse to turn willing werewolves into the Wolfir, a new race of noble wolf-like creatures dedicated to Avacyn's cause. In rarer cases, victims were fully cured of their curse. Avacyn's return ushered in a new era of peace and tranquility. Humans had been spreading out across the land again, building new homes, farms, and towns. But such hopeful times are not meant to last in this world. One day, Avacyn was meditating in her favorite mountain retreat as the prayers of 10,000 souls washed over her like a misty rain, each beseeching the angels' intervention. Avacyn, save us, help us, protect us. One panicked prayer broke through the normal murmurs. It was a mother fearing for her child's safety. Avacyn focused on the prayer, on the woman sending it to her, and soared with blinding speed over valleys and forests unerringly to her petitioner. The strength of the woman's prayer, a bright beacon in Avacyn's mind. After arriving and calmly reassuring the panicked mother, she found out that her child had run away from home and had been seen running off into the forest. While the world was much safer since Avacyn returned, it was still not a safe world, especially not for children. Avacyn assured the mother that she would try to find her son, and find him she did, as not long after searching, the boy began praying to Avacyn, allowing the angel to locate him in the woods and reunite him with his mother. Both mother and child sobbed as they hugged each other. Avacyn wished every moment of every day was like this. Families rejoined, fear erased, happiness created, protecting the innocent. This was her purpose. Satisfied her work was done, Avacyn began her ascent to her mountain retreat when a violent shimmer racked her body, shaking her vision and causing her to collapse in pain. The feeling abated soon after, but there was now a soft buzzing in her ears, a constant low hum persisting in the back of her mind. Avacyn got up and looked at the two humans she just helped. Where once she saw two pure souls, now she perceived them differently. She watched as the mother's soft face hardened with anger and scolded her child for running away, pushing the child violently. She looked at the bawling child, a snot-nosed weakling seeking reassurance after committing wrong. These mortals lived fickle lives, committing the same sins as the horrors Avacyn had spent her life protecting them from. Avacyn stumbled away, her balance off, her mind fuzzy. She took flight, weaving back and forth into the sky with an unusual lack of grace, leaving both humans below. She sought to hear prayers, but coding every word now was this buzzing. She could not make out the prayers over the constant noise. Instead, she came back to the same words again and again, plunged into her mind like a spear. The seeds of men are rotten. Avacyn fled, seeking refuge from her own mind. It was nowhere to be found. In the following weeks, dark rumors spread amongst the villages. Troubling reports had sprung up across the land. Uprisings and disappearances and slaughters. A shadow had risen over Innistrad, though it wasn't clear to its inhabitants what was happening. Strange, unexplained oddities started cropping up as well. Stone obelisks began appearing throughout the lands, seemingly shaped to be pointing all in the same direction. Strange bundles of fleshy tentacles were found growing on the sides of buildings. People began discovering mutations cropping up on humans and animals. An eye growing out of a shoulder, an extra row of teeth, and so on. The people of Innistrad had never faced such strange happenings like these before. Who was responsible? And where were the angels to protect them? Where was Avacyn? Unfortunately for the people of Innistrad, Avacyn would reemerge not as the savior they once knew, but now as a merciless destroyer of humanity. A madness had taken hold of Avacyn and most of the angels of Innistrad. In her delirium, the Archangel came to view humans as the same type of evil as the werewolves and vampires she was created to destroy, and so believed that protecting Innistrad meant purging it of the humans as well as the evil forces she was meant to keep in check. She created a new angelic flight, the Flight of Moonsilver, to serve as her honor guard. Armed with moonsilver spears forged from the shards of the broken Hell Vault, these angels flew with Avacyn into battle against any perceived threat, wiping out entire villages of humans in their purges. Avacyn's madness also marked the end of the Curse Mute, and with it gone, lycanthropy returned to the previously cured individuals, causing the resurgence of werewolves to once again terrorize the lands. Madness seized two of the other angelic flights as well. The soldier angels of Flight Gold Knight, led by Gisela, once a frontline defense for humanity against the horrors that preyed upon them, now became the scourge of all mortal life on Innistrad, razing villages to the ground with their fiery swords. And the Angels of Flight Alabaster, led by Bruna, once the leaders in the church's efforts to root out and punish corruption from within, such as demon cultists and necromancers, now push the church to greater and more desperate actions. The devout officials of the church, certain that Avacyn could do no wrong, and prodded by Flight Alabaster and other sinister forces within the church, launched the Lunarch Inquisition to aid the angels in purging the perceived sin from among the faithful. In their zeal, they executed more innocent people than evildoers, and the angels' reign of terror expanded even further in horrible scope. The only flight that remained unaffected by madness was the host of Herons led by Sigarda. Sigarda did what she could to protect the people under her care from the madness of her sisters, but she knew that she lacked the power to confront Avacyn head-on, so her flight retreated to maintain a safe distance away. While nobody knew the cause of this madness, ironically, it all leads back to the reckless and selfish actions of the world's protector, Sorin Markov. Unknown to the people of Innistrad, Avacyn and the demons were not the only people released from the Hell Vault when it was shattered. The planeswalker Nahiri was freed as well, and it's her desire for vengeance against Sorin Markov that sets in motion all the events in Shadows Over Innistrad. To understand why and how, we have to go back thousands of years in the past. Nahiri is a planeswalker and powerful lithomancer, a mage that has mastery over stone. Nahiri's planeswalker spark ignited over 6,000 years ago in the pre-mending era. Unlike planeswalkers of the current post-mending timeline, whose ignited spark simply allows them to travel the multiverse, an ignited planeswalker spark in pre-mending times allowed not just the ability to planeswalk, but also turned them into immortal, godlike beings, making them some of the most powerful individuals in the multiverse. Nahiri met Sorin soon after the young core's planeswalker spark ignited, and they forged an unlikely friendship. The older vampire became a mentor to Nahiri, teaching her about the multiverse and how to use her newfound powers. They traveled to many planes together, and during those travels they came across the Eldrazi Titans. The Eldrazi are a race of interplanar beings that travel from plane to plane through the Blind Eternities, the space between planes in the multiverse, which they are native to. They feed on the mana and life energy of the planes, leaving lifeless husks in their wake as they move from one world to the next. Their origin is unknown, their nature is poorly understood, and their true forms are inscrutable within the Aether. When a Titan wishes to feed on a plane, it extends a part of its essence that physically manifests itself inside the plane as an avatar, along with an army of drones that are also an extension of its body and will. These manifestations devour all the mana from the plane until the plane is destroyed. Then the Eldrazi move on to the next one. Nahiri and Sorin saw the destruction caused by the Eldrazi, and after meeting another planeswalker soon after, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, the three planeswalkers decide to work together to stop the Eldrazi's endless destruction. The three decided to force the Eldrazi into physical form and trap them on a plane, sacrificing that plane for the well-being of the multiverse. The Eldrazi hungered for mana, so a plane rich with flowing mana would be required as a good lure. In the end, Nahiri would shoulder the greatest sacrifice as the planeswalkers decided upon using Zendikar, Nahiri's home. Sorin lured the Eldrazi to the plane, directing their hunger to that unique mana. Ugin used his invisible breath to combat the Eldrazi, and his colorless magic to bind them to the plane. And Nahiri constructed a massive network of stone hedrons, whose power would form the bars of a plane-wide prison, forever preventing the Eldrazi from leaving. Ugin then sealed the prison with a spell that sent the Eldrazi into harmless dormancy. Their mission was a success. So long as the Hedron network was left undisturbed, the Eldrazi would not awaken from their slumber. With their mission complete, the three disbanded. Nahiri would remain on Zendikar, protecting her home and making sure that the Eldrazi would not awaken. For their parts, both Ugin and Sorin vowed that they would return to help re-imprison the Eldrazi once more should they ever break free. All Nahiri would need to do is signal them and they would come. And with that, Ugin and Sorin departed back to their homeworlds. Nahiri kept watch over Zendikar for thousands of years. Eventually, the prison of the Eldrazi was disturbed and became unstable, allowing brood lineages to spill over the plane again. Nahiri signaled Sorin and Ugin for assistance, but neither responded. She managed to restore the prison on her own, but she was confused why the other planeswalkers did not respond, so she decided to track Sorin down on Innistrad. When she found Sorin, the vampire was weak and recovering, having just spent a considerable amount of energy creating Avacyn and the Hell Vault to protect his plane. Nahiri approached her old mentor and friend, standing beside the Hell Vault, asking Sorin why he never answered her signal. Sorin explained that he never received the summons, hypothesizing that the protective wards he just placed on Innistrad might have blocked the interplanar signal as well. But something that must be said about Sorin, something that is crucial to the story, is that, well, he's a massive dick. So instead of explaining this to Nahiri with empathy and concern for her well-being and the well-being of her home, Sorin spoke down to his fellow ancient planeswalker, treating her like a child, making light of and dismissing her concerns. To Nahiri, this was a slap in the face. She had put everything on the line to defeat the Eldrazi, sacrificing her home as a prison and spending her entire life guarding them to keep the multiverse safe. Meanwhile, Soren, someone she thought was her friend, is speaking down to her, is cagey and dismissive of her concerns, and seems to only care about protecting his own home, with zero care about Nahiri or Zendikar. So Nahiri escalated the situation. She ordered Soren to come with her to Zendikar to make sure the prison was properly secured, and she would make him come with force if necessary. She didn't want to hurt her old friend, but she wanted to earn his respect, and to do so she needed to beat him. Obviously, Soren did not respond well to this, so a fight erupted. With Soren weakened, there was no chance he'd win this fight. Sensing the danger Nahiri posed to the plane, the newly created Avacyn intervened, battling Nahiri, though even the powerful Archangel was no match for a pre-mending walker. But Soren took advantage of a moment of hesitation in Nahiri and disarmed her, then cast a spell, imprisoning Nahiri inside the Hell Vault. So it was that Nahiri became the first prisoner inside that monolith. Nahiri spent 1,000 years imprisoned inside the Hell Vault, kept in magical stasis, fully conscious the entire time, like a never-ending solitary confinement. Her hatred of Soren and her love of Zendikar was the only things that kept her from plunging into hopelessness. She meticulously recreated the entire world of Zendikar in her mind, down to the last stone, as the centuries passed. Then, after 1,000 years, the Hell Vault was shattered and she was finally free, though no longer an immortal being like she was during the pre-mending times. Nahiri immediately planeswalked back to Zendikar, only to find to her horror that the Hedron prison had been broken a year earlier and the Eldrazi Titans were ravaging the world. She saw the vast and horrible being Ulamog looming over in the horizon, and without any preparation, without any help, and without her pre-mending planeswalker powers, Nahiri believed Zendikar to be lost. It was at this point that Nahiri made a vow. As Zendikar has bled, so will Innistrad. As I have wept, so will Soren. This I swear on the ashes of my world. With only vengeance driving her forward, Nahiri set off back to Innistrad and got to work. Nahiri recruited the ghoul caller Gisa to help her construct an enormous stone structure off the coast of Nephalia, which she named the Drownyard Temple. Gisa mistakenly believed in her crazed mind that Nahiri was her friend and would assist her in finally defeating her brother Geralf. Gisa raised a huge crew of zombies to work hauling rocks to build the structure. With the construction of the temple underway, Nahiri finally let Soren know that her vengeance was at hand. Traveling to Markov Manor, Soren's ancestral home in Stenzia, she killed the vampires inside, embedding them into the walls as she tore the manor apart and reshaped it into a great floating stone pattern. Then she returned to Nephalia to continue construction of her temple, letting Soren find the ruined manor later. The manor was merely a signal. Soon Soren would know ultimate defeat. Tragically, Nahiri did not know that a band of planeswalkers were fighting for Zendikar at the same time she had abandoned it. The four planeswalkers, Gideon Jura, Nissa Ravain, Chandra Nalaar, and Jace Beleren, would ultimately succeed in saving the plane, destroying two of the Eldrazi Titans, Ulamog and Kozilek. Given their power to walk between worlds, these planeswalkers resolved to use that power for the greater good of the multiverse. Together they swore an oath to protect the multiverse as a group called the Gatewatch, named in memory of Seagate, the greatest city of Zendikar which was destroyed by the Eldrazi. With two Eldrazi Titans slain on Zendikar and the third one still missing, Jace came to Innistrad in the midst of its madness, looking for Soren Markov. The Mind Mage knew that Soren Markov was one of the planeswalkers that had originally imprisoned the Eldrazi and hoped to convince the vampire to help him find and capture the last remaining one. He also had a contact on Innistrad, someone he thought could help him not only in his search for Soren, but also in dealing with the threat of the Eldrazi. So his first task on the plane was to visit the necromancer Liliana Vess. Jace and Liliana had been in a relationship previously, but it ended when Liliana used and betrayed him for her own ends. Still, both harbored feelings for each other. Jace asked Liliana to help him unravel the Eldrazi mystery, but she refused, as she was more concerned with her own pursuit of ridding herself of her demons that had ownership of her soul. She warned him to avoid Soren Markov, and Jace left disappointed and suspicious that Liliana was probably hiding something from him. Heedless of Liliana's warnings, Jace traveled to Markov Manor, finding it transformed into a gravity-defying pattern of floating stonework and countless dead Markov vampires embedded into the stone walls. Drawn onward in horrified fascination, Jace discovered one clue to the mysteries unfolding before him, one protruding hand clutching a book. Painstakingly deciphering the script, he learned it was a journal detailing the private thoughts of another planeswalker who was also investigating the strange events on the plane, and had sent this ill-fated carrier to Stenzia to confirm some findings. The planeswalker was the moonfolk Tamiyo. Like Jace, Tamiyo was a seeker of knowledge, exploring the multiverse to learn all she could. But unlike the Mind Mage, Tamiyo's sacred duty was that of a historian, chronicling events while never interfering. Tamiyo's journal detailed her research into the altered flow of mana through the lands of Innistrad. Tamiyo observed that the mana flow had an effect on the behavior of Avacyn and her angels. She had also discovered the origin of Avacyn herself, that she was created by Soren Markov as Innistrad's protector. Connecting these two facts, Jace realized that the madness of the angels might be connected to Soren. He reasoned that retracing Tamiyo's steps might reveal clues to Soren's location. So Jace visited the locations detailed by Tamiyo, seeing the warped stone monoliths called cryptoliths in all the sites. The cryptoliths were shaped in an angular formation that all pointed in one direction, toward the coast of Nephalia. He confirmed what Tamiyo had already discovered. These stones were channeling all the mana in the surrounding areas, redirecting the ley lines to a specific location. Now obsessed to see his quest to its conclusion, Jace hurried off to where all the mana was being channeled, the Drownyard Temple. There he discovered the Great Stone Ring structure encircled by more of the twisted cryptoliths. Hordes of zombies carried massive stones from shore to build what looked like an eldritch temple dedicated to some elder god of the sea. Jace hid in the shadows, watching the zombies toil as angels wheeled erratically in the sky overhead, madly circling the structure like moths around a flame. Jace was furious to see the zombie hordes building the structure. His obsessive mind immediately suspected Liliana of doing all of this, of corrupting the angels for some unknown reasons, perhaps a secret vendetta against Soren. So he set off to confront the necromancer. Jace was, of course, wrong, and Liliana quickly put him in his place, but she also worried that Jace's obsession was going to get him killed. Jace ignored her concern, and since she was not responsible for corrupting Avacyn, Jace only had one last lead to follow: Avacyn herself. He decided to go to Thraben Cathedral to confront the Archangel at her home, to save the plane from the madness of Avacyn, and he hoped to find Soren at last. Meanwhile, Soren was furious at what Nahiri had done to his plane, so he traveled to meet Olivia Voldaren, the head of the Voldaren vampire family. He appealed to Olivia for aid in hunting down and confronting Nahiri, but Olivia demanded that Soren first destroy Avacyn. Creating the angel was his greatest betrayal against his own kind, which is bad enough. But now the Mad Angel was no longer even maintaining the balance Soren created her for, destroying both humans and vampires alike. Soren had been agonizing about what to do with Avacyn, but this pushed him into dealing with it. So with a heavy heart, Soren left to confront his creation. Jace sought out Avacyn in the heart of Thraben Cathedral. He managed to sneak his way past its guardians, both Cathars and angels, to reach its innermost chambers. There he found Tamiyo, the moonfolk planeswalker that had written the journal. After sending her friend Genric to Markov Manor with her journal in hand to confirm her suspicions about alterations in the mana flows, which in hindsight probably was a bad idea for poor Genric, Tamiyo's own investigations had also led her to Thraben Cathedral to unravel the mysteries. Tamiyo calmed Jace's frantic mind with her magic, and after debating what to do next, Jace managed to convince her to help him confront the angel and learn the source of the madness. Just as they hatched their plan, Avacyn crashed through the stained glass window and attacked. Tamiyo kept Avacyn busy while Jace tried to pierce Avacyn's mind, but he couldn't get a firm hold on the angel's alien and turbulent thoughts. Avacyn defeated both of them and was about to finish off Jace when Sorin crashed through the ceiling and confronted the Archangel himself. Sorin tried to calm down Avacyn as they battled, explaining that he was her creator and reminding her of her purpose. His words eventually got through to her, and for a brief moment, Avacyn was lucid again, remembering why she was created, to be a symbol of good, to protect. But then she remembered what she had become, slaughtering all those humans, razing their villages. She had become a monster. And if Sorin was her creator, if Sorin let all of this happen, then her creator was a monster as well. She renewed her attack on the vampire, and their battle had them crashing down into the cellar of Thraben Cathedral, the vault of the Archangel, the location where Sorin created Avacyn 1,000 years ago. After pleading with his creation to no avail, Sorin finally decided that to save Innistrad, Avacyn had to be destroyed. So Sorin cast a spell that unmade his creation on the very spot Avacyn was created. The Archangel was gone from the world. It was only then that Sorin realized he had made a terrible mistake. Neither he, nor Tamiyo, nor Jace managed to solve the mystery in time. Nahiri's warping of stones and reshaping ley lines, redirecting all that mana to the Drownyard Temple, that was the cause of the Angels' madness. As incarnate forms of white mana, the Angels were part of the magical substance of the plane, and Nahiri's manipulation of Innistrad's mana created a dissonance within their being that twisted their minds past the breaking point. And Sorin just now realized why Nahiri was channeling the plane's mana into one spot. She was using the conflux of mana as a gateway to lure and summon the Eldrazi, just as they had done thousands of years ago on Zendikar. Avacyn and the Angels perceived the Eldrazi's approach as a contagion that must be expunged from the world. And like white blood cells reacting to a foreign invader, the Angels lashed out, though in their madness, they incorrectly identified the source of the contagion. But even driven mad, as long as Avacyn existed, she remained a protective ward on the plane, blocking out interplanar threats. And now Sorin played right into Nahiri's plan by destroying the Archangel, casting down the last barrier that stood between Innistrad and the Eldrazi's insatiable hunger. Nahiri's summoning ritual was finally complete. Emrakul entered the plane at last. Emrakul is the largest and most fearsome of the three Eldrazi titans. She causes horror wherever she soars, embodying desolation, emotional and physical distance, the chill of the void, and the terror of being alone. Just the approach of Emrakul pressed on the minds of Innistrad's inhabitants, straining their sanity, and now her full manifestation amplified the effect tremendously. Emrakul arrived in Innistrad without her brood of drones and other spawn, so she immediately began warping the creatures of Innistrad into them. Beings transformed into Emrakul's spawn manifested fleshy lattice structures, distorted symmetry, and tentacles. Lots of tentacles. Those who had already begun their descent into corruption before the Eldrazi's arrival were warped beyond recognition. But even those who fought against the madness during her approach were susceptible to the life-warping effects of her presence. Throughout the lands, creatures succumbed to the Eldrazi's influence, mutating them into her drones. The werewolves who fell under her sway became a group known as the Drone Pack, hunting in the forests of Kessig. The Stromkirk vampire bloodline, Nefalian cultists who previously worshipped elder gods in the deep ocean, were among the first of Innistrad's denizens to be transformed into Eldrazi's spawn. Perhaps the most horrifying example, though, was the fate of the village of Hanware, whose entire village and all of its inhabitants were merged together into a single Eldrazi ooze. Every living being was subject to the effects of Emrakul's life-warping presence, and its effects were catastrophic. Just as the Angels were the first to go mad as Emrakul drew near, they were the first to experience the life-warping effects of the Eldrazi's full presence on the plane as well. Gisela and Bruna, the two archangels who had joined Avacyn in her madness, fused together to form a huge Eldrazi monstrosity, Brizella, Voice of Nightmares. This new Eldrazi Archangel led the drones made up of fallen angels and called them the Flight of Nightmares, also taking control of the demon-worshipping cult, the Skurstag, and the Lunarch Inquisition of the Church, all to help Emrakul feed on the plane. Innistrad was on the brink. Those that did not succumb to Emrakul's influence banded together in a desperate attempt at self-preservation. The humans of the lands were forced to join forces with even the enemies of civilization: werewolves, vampires, ghoul callers, scabberin, and necromancers alike. Anyone who resisted Emrakul's corruption stood ready to take up arms against such a terrible threat. Of course, all parties of these alliances recognized that this was merely a temporary truce, but for now they fought united. In fact, the Ghoul Callers found that their zombie creations were particularly effective against the Eldrazi, since the undead proved immune to Emrakul's influence. Not everyone who survived Emrakul's arrival were motivated to defeat the invader, however. Believing that the world was already doomed, Sorin only had vengeance on his mind. As he had fulfilled his end of the bargain by destroying Avacyn, together he and Olivia mobilized what remained of the Markov and Voldaren vampire houses and marched for war against Nahiri, who openly challenged them at the ruins of Markov Manor. Sorin was one of the most powerful planeswalkers, and the army of vampires he led were formidable, but Nahiri had been preparing for this moment for centuries. She surprised the vampires with an army of Eldrazi drones and had twisted ley lines around the battleground to disrupt Sorin's blood magic. Their fight was ferocious, but in the end, Nahiri managed to imprison Sorin in a stone wall of his ruined ancestral home. The stone teeth that held him chewed at his insides, keeping him in perpetual anguish that would sap the focus he'd need to planeswalk away. Nahiri aimed Sorin's prison so you could have a view of the world ending as Emrakul approached Thraben. With her vengeance complete, Nahiri planeswalked away. Olivia also decided to let Sorin rot in his prison. She had upheld her end of the bargain, dealing with Nahiri, and now she was content to let Sorin languish while she took the mantle of Lord of Innistrad. But first, she had an Eldrazi to defeat. Not all Inquisitors of the former Church of Avacyn had succumbed to madness. The Lunarch Marshal Odric and the Guardian of Thraben, Thalia, fled the Flight of Nightmares and regrouped, rallying those who did not fall to corruption. Thalia founded the Order of Saint Traft to fight back against the Eldrazi. Realizing that the undead were immune to Emrakul's influence, Thalia voluntarily allowed herself to be possessed by the spirit of Saint Traft, an ancient hero known for battling demons. The Geist offered protection to Thalia both physically by enhancing her strength and fortitude, and mentally, fortifying her mind against Emrakul's influence. Thalia led the Order of Saint Traft back to Thraben to take back control of the city from the Inquisitors and the Flight of Nightmares. On the way, the Order found an unexpected ally in Olivia Voldaren and her army of vampires, who came to help eliminate the Eldrazi threat. With their combined forces, and with more Geists possessing the willing bodies of Cathars to protect them, they successfully fought their way into Thraben, where Brizella, Voice of Nightmares, awaited them. Thalia immediately took the fight to Brizella, but was quickly overwhelmed by the enormous monstrosity. Thalia was saved by a last-second intervention by Sigarda, the only remaining uncorrupted Archangel, and previously the sister of Bruna and Gizella, buying precious moments for her to recover. Sigarda was quickly overwhelmed as well, though, as Brizella began pulling the angel into her body, trying to merge the three sisters together. But with the spirit's aid, Thalia picked up the Spear of Avacyn and drove it into Brizella's heart, killing the Eldrazi drone and saving Sigarda. They had established a foothold in Thraben, but their victory would be short-lived as Emrakul began approaching the city. Thalia knew that she didn't have the power to defeat the Titan, but thankfully for her and the people of Innistrad, she was about to get some powerful backup. Jace had planeswalked back to Zendikar to assemble the Gatewatch, and now the group of planeswalkers arrived to Thraben to defeat Emrakul. As the Titan approached the city, the Gatewatch planned to take her out just like they did the other two on Zendikar. Jace would shield the group's minds from Emrakul's influence, Nissa would tap into the ley lines of the plane to channel its mana, and Chandra would ignite that mana to destroy Emrakul. But things were different this time. Every Eldrazi drone for miles around had marched on the city. The Gatewatch and Thalia's Order of St. Traft fought to hold their ground, but the enemy massed in such numbers that the Gatewatch couldn't even reach Emrakul. With a growing sense of horror, the Planeswalkers realized that they weren't going to be able to kill Emrakul in the same way they killed the Titans on Zendikar. There, Nissa had been able to channel the soul of the plane itself, but Innistrad didn't offer the same elemental power. Jace's ability to shield others was starting to falter. Soon, the Gatewatch would be overrun, and they hadn't even been able to get close to Emrakul. Just as the Gatewatch was about to be defeated, an army of zombies breached the city walls, tearing apart the Eldrazi horrors and turning the tide of battle. Liliana had arrived to save them. Liliana wasn't usually one to risk her neck for others, but she decided to take a stand here. Innistrad was a special place for her, the first plane she planeswalked to, and where she learned to be a necromancer. She didn't want to see the plane destroyed. She also figured that if she could help the Gatewatch here, then perhaps she could call in a favor with them to defeat the other demons she was bound to. And finally, though she wouldn't admit it, she still had feelings for Jace and wanted to protect him. For all those reasons, she arrived to Thraben, joining the other Planeswalkers at the heart of battle. Liliana's zombies formed a protective ring around the group, fighting off the drones, while the Necromancer tapped deep into the power of the Chain Veil, using it to fuel powerful death magic that she whipped at Emrakul. It held back the Titan and its forces temporarily, but Emrakul could not be stopped, and she began advancing once more as Liliana began to tire. As Emrakul approached, the mental shield that Jace had created began to crumble, and the group began succumbing to madness, with Jace seemingly speaking to Emrakul herself in his mind. It was then that Tamiyo arrived on the scene, breaking her vow to be a neutral observer and instead aid the Gatewatch directly. She told Jace an important truth. The Hell Vault was a fragment of the moon, and its power to imprison demons represented just a tiny sliver of what the moon could hold. Jace understood immediately, and combining all their knowledge and magical powers, the Planeswalkers cast a mighty spell, fueled by the magic inside of Tamiyo's iron-bound scroll, a scroll she vowed never to open. The tremendous power of the Planeswalker's magic drew Emrakul into the moon, transforming the moon into a giant hell vault that would keep the Eldrazi bound forever, or so they hoped. But the truth of what actually transpired is less clear. When Jace spoke to Emrakul in the height of his madness, Emrakul told him that the time wasn't right for her to be devouring the plane of Innistrad. And after speaking to a horrified Tamiyo after the battle, the Moonfolk explained that Emrakul took control of her during the fight, had forced her to open the forbidden iron-bound scroll she vowed never to open, and changed the contents of the scroll from being one of destruction to one of imprisonment. This meant that Emrakul had imprisoned herself in the moon, though neither Planeswalker knew why. Jace and Tamiyo kept this revelation to themselves. The Gatewatch would take this victory. Liliana also took the oath of the Gatewatch, promising to protect the multiverse in hopes that the group could assist her in getting rid of her demons without having to use the Chain Veil anymore. And they began looking for the next great threat that demanded their attention. And that's how we left Innistrad after Eldritch Moon. The world is pretty much in shambles. Nearly all the angels have been wiped out, with the only survivor that we know of being Sigarda. Avacyn, the protector of the world and the source of humanity's protective magic, is gone. And while we can assume that Thalia has rallied what remains of the Church of Avacyn under her new Order of St. Traft, they do not have a fraction of the strength needed to protect humanity from the horrors of the night. We leave Innistrad in a darker place than ever before, and now we wait to see what becomes of the plane in the next set, the Midnight Hunt. And now we've reached the end of this video, and oh boy, was it a long one. So thank you so much for getting this far. This was the longest, most time-consuming video I have ever made, And yet I only just scratched the surface of the lore of Innistrad. It's truly a fantastic setting, and Wizards of the Coast did an amazing job bringing the entire place to life. If you like this video and want more lore videos like this one in the future, please be sure to like and subscribe. Maybe share the video with your friends as well, since if this does well, I can justify doing more of them. That's all for now, so until next time, friends. See ya!